Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus, I want to do something today that I have done, I believe, twice before, and that is address the advisors of President Trump, the evangelical advisors of President Trump. When I addressed them the last two times, they did not take heed, and it turned out to be a total disaster. The Holy Bible says, where no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. That's from Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. And of course, the advice is no good unless people take heed to it. So I, Daniel White, the third president of Gospel Light Society International, once again feels the leading of the Lord to address the evangelical advisors of President Trump. And I want to tell them that they need to be with Trump through this time with all of these different court cases. But they need to tell President Trump, former President Trump, for his own good, for his family's good, and for the nation's good, to stop running for the presidency and to endorse someone else. As many of you know, former President Donald Trump has been indicted regarding alleged classified documents cover-up. 37 different counts. And so I am telling Trump's evangelical advisors, to name just a few: Franklin Graham, Darrell Scott, Robert Jeffress, Van Moody, Jack Graham, Marvin Winans, Greg Lowry, black and white, advisors and supporters of President Trump, at least during his first presidency, as well as many others, to go be with Trump. You cannot be with him in the good times and not be with him in the bad times. And you need to serve as pastor. He doesn't need a prophet now. You should have been a prophet back then, and you weren't. But he needs a pastor now, but a pastor who will tell him the truth with teeth, and let him know in no uncertain way that if you do not take our advice, we cannot support you going forward. And so you need to encourage him to cease running for the presidency of the United States. Let him know he's not going to let anybody down, because what is happening is too much. It's too much for him, it's too much for his family, it's too much for the nation, it's too much for even his supporters. Two pastors have died, and I'll mention that later already. Many people are in jail and rotting in jail over foolishness. So tell President Trump that he needs to humble himself. He needs to turn to God himself. He needs to pray. All of the bravado and pride and arrogancy and gung-ho foolishness needs to cease. People's lives have been destroyed. I'm telling Franklin Graham, Jack Graham, Robert Jeffress, all of you people who call yourselves evangelical advisors, you need to, for Trump, you need to advise Trump to cease running for the presidency of the United States of America. Tell him to endorse somebody else and to throw all of his support behind somebody else. To take care of these serious charges that he is facing immediately. Today is Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Within 24 hours, he will be in another court. This would make 3 this year. And there are others to come that could be even more devastating. It's time for you evangelical advisors to stop being fans like everybody else and other people. It's okay for other people to be fans. You need to be a fan of God and of Jesus. And you need to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to President Trump. If he rejects you, then you have done your job. tell him he did the best he could for the nation when he was president. And by the way, if you want to know whether or not I would prefer Trump over Biden, I would. Not for political reasons, but Trump is a type A individual. I'm a type A individual. Trump is a man who obviously loves women, and I am a man who loves women. And I do believe that men, contrary to our to popular society, ought to be forward as men to speak to women that they might be interested to if they are single, or interested in if they are single. And whether you like it or not, many people voted for Trump and supported Trump even after his wicked statements about women, because he showed interest, a strong interest in women. I'm all for that, particularly in this day and time. I do not believe that a man should grab a woman's vagina that he does not know. I have probably been with more women than Trump has ever been, and I have never done that with a woman that I do not know. I believe that most men, including Trump, has never really done that with a woman or to a woman that they do not know. And because most men have a natural, godly fear and respect for women. God put it in their hearts to be that way. And I'm addressing this because many people do not understand the psychology as to why people supported him, men and women. Because society is going backwards, and people were pleased that they had a man who was interested in women. What he said was wrong and not true. Probably less than 1% of men would do something like that, and that is rapist activity. But that's why so many people still love him and support him, whether you like it or not. They were glad to see a man, a regular man who loves women. Men loved it, men like it, and women liked it. So that's why they still support him, stand with him. And that's why some of you evangelicals like him. Because he's a regular guy who has shown that he is naturally interested in women. Particularly in this day and time, where we got men going after ugly men going after ugly men, and women going after women. And so, but at the same time, President Trump did not do anything about it, or he did not do all that he could have done to stop this insane sodomite homosexual foolishness that's going on in this country. And he will not do so, because his favorite mentor of all time is Roy Cohn. I think I have his name right. And he was a homosexual and died of AIDS. He's not going to be the one to stop this demonic foolishness. And if you don't stop this foolishness, if you don't vote for somebody to stop this foolishness in the law that Obama and Biden started, is not going to stop. So I'm calling on the advisors of Trump, the evangelical advisors of Trump, to tell him in no uncertain way that he needs to stop running, that the country would do better with somebody else at this point. And by the way, all of the advisors of Trump, the evangelical advisors of Trump, will know the names of these people. Many of you will not know the names of these people that I'm getting ready to mention. Dr. Jerry Falwell Sr. would not stand with Trump at this point. Dr. D. James Kennedy would not stand with Donald Trump at this point. E.V. Hill, Pastor E.V. Hill, would not stand with Trump at this point. And all of you know these people. They're dead now. They're in heaven. Every last one of you preachers that I have called out, you know these preachers who left the country as well as they could. Dr. Billy Graham could not stand with Donald Trump, and you know it. Franklin Graham, you know it. Dr. Billy Graham would not stand. These men would not stand with Donald Trump, and you should not stand with Donald. I'm talking to people who claim to be Christians, evangelicals, who believe the Bible, standing with a man who has been accused of rape, who has said not only once but twice that women allowed him to grab their pussy, their vagina, when men who have been with more women than Trump has ever been with, including myself, has never even thought of something like that. That is rapist activity if you're thinking along those lines. And the only reason why men and women have stood with him in spite of that is because they're sick and tired of being surrounded by people who are homosexuals and sodomites. So-called transgender, LGBTQ plus all of the alphabet and the legions plus the legions of demons. It's a psychological thing. They were just so glad, so refreshing. And it is refreshing for a man to be excited about a woman. It's a beautiful thing for a man to want a woman and for a woman to be wanted by a man instead of all of this demonic foolishness that's going on in this country. See? So that's how you need to deal with that. But the four men I mentioned, they would not support him. They would not support him just for that alone. And yet we have so-called evangelical preachers and Christian preachers who are standing for that and more. I met a white man the other day who was a supporter of Trump. He's a good guy. And we were not even in a setting that he was supposed to talk about this. He said, I was for Trump. I've been a conservative and a Republican for years. But when they pulled that stunt on January the 6th, he said, I was done. I'm done. He said, I did not fight for this country for that kind of demonic foolishness. And all of you evangelical advisors need to be concerned about the two preachers who died from gung-ho coronavirus foolishness. Nobody says anything about them. Two black preachers who stood with Trump, who supported Trump more than you did. They sacrificed their lives by following the gung-ho foolishness surrounding the coronavirus. And all of you Trump advisors ought to be way more concerned about the people rotting in jail because of this gung-ho foolishness that happened on January the 6th. You don't need to get mad at me. You don't need to blame. You don't need to say that I don't like Trump or I hate Trump. We're dealing with basic things that we would not stand for 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Let me tell you something that's happening in evangelicalism that is a tragedy. The sons who took over from their fathers and their grandfathers have died. They do not believe like their fathers believed. And so therefore, you have driven evangelicalism into the ditch. The sons of the great ones, Dr. Charles Stanley, would not stand for this foolishness. As a Christian, as a man of God. And so, my dear friends, former President Trump should be advised by his evangelical advisors, and I am advising him myself. I'm not one of the evangelical advisors, but since they're not going to say it, and they're fans like everybody else, and they know that he would get angry if they told him that. Why? Let's be real about it. That's immaturity. That's childishness. If a man cannot take rebuke, if a man cannot take advice, and you have got on board to give him advice, and he's making you sign some kind of form not to say anything about what you talk about. By the way, no preacher ought to sign a form like that. No preacher. The preacher needs to be free to speak for God anywhere. And these so-called evangelical advisors need to say this publicly. They need to tell him privately and say this publicly, that you need to sit down. You don't need to run for president again. I know you want to. But you need to let somebody else. There are other men who are capable and who are more fit to do the job of the President of the United States than you. And by the way, in case you don't know it, God sees all presidents and all governors, all mayors, not like we see them, as political hacks. God sees them as ministers who are called just as much as a preacher of the gospel. And by the way, it is a step down for a preacher to run for president of the United States. We're over the president. We tell the president what God wants him to do, because evidently they don't know. So you need to tell the president he did the best he could for the nation when he was president. All type A people in this country would identify more with Trump than Biden. All men and women who are heterosexuals would identify with Trump more than Biden. Because we understand that. We understand that attraction. It's a beautiful thing. It's a good thing. And more evangelicals ought to talk about it. We got the sodomites and the homosexuals out here celebrating in the street, and evangelicals act like it is something sinful and dirty to talk about. Sex is a beautiful thing between a man and a woman, like the way God made it to be. One of the greatest gifts you'll ever have in life is sex. And Donald Trump represented that to people. It's a beautiful thing. And I don't care, and some of you evangelicals, you're having sex too. And I don't care if you like it or not. See, one of the things that turned people on to Trump was when he said, not only what he said about that was beyond the pale, but when he said, even though he was married, when he said he was talking about a woman that he was attracted to, and he was talking to Bush's nephew. Said, yeah, man, she's beautiful, man. She's beautiful, man. I was trying hard, man. I was trying hard to get her. See, men understand that. Real men understand that. Whether it's right or wrong. You sweet evangelicals, you understand it too. And women understand it. They're not like men, thank God, but they understand. They understand a man wanting a woman, and they understand a woman being wanted by a man. It is a beautiful thing. Look at me real good. Don't bow your head yet. It's not time to play. Some of you lying evangelicals, you make me sick with that foolishness. And you secretly support him because he's a man who loves a woman, who's attracted to a woman. It is wrong for him to use rapist language, but that was refreshing. And what's wrong in the church, in the evangelical church today, we're letting people, homosexuals, into the church, men after men, women after women, and you're afraid to say anything about heterosexual sex. In fact, I heard the other day one of these so-called sodomite, homosexual, affirming pastors. He was trying to talk to the heterosexuals, and he apologized to the sodomites and the homosexuals in the congregation. Now, you homosexuals and sodomites and LGBT, you all just hold on. Don't get angry about what I'm saying to the heterosexuals over here. I said, look at this. God help us. He's trying to appease the homosexuals and the sodomites, comforting them about something he's saying that is biblical. Let me just say something to all of you heterosexuals out there who are attracted to the opposite sex. There's nothing wrong with it. You just need to do it inside the boundaries of marriage. The marriage bed is undefiled. Have at it. Enjoy it. Have some babies like God wants you to. Somebody's having sex with over 7 billion, close to 10 billion people on earth. Somebody's doing something. Glory be to God. You sweet evangelicals committing adultery because you won't have sex with the spouse that God gave you. And you're horny as the devil. That's why you're committing adultery. That's why, I don't care if you like, listen to me now. Listen to me. All of you sweet evangelicals who hush hush and keep quiet about things. If you can tolerate Trump, you can tolerate me. I don't want to hear it. If you can put up with Trump stuff, you can put it with my stuff. We need more pastors talking about sex. Heterosexual sex. It's the most beautiful thing on earth outside of salvation. It is so powerful. The pleasure is so deep physically, but God uses it to bring another soul and another spirit into the world. That's how powerful it is. How powerful it is. And so, evangelical advisors, it's time for you to man up and tell the man that some of you are afraid of that he needs to get with his family, his wife and children, and rest. And get ready to fight these charges and other charges, whether they be false or not, and try to enjoy the rest of his life for his own good. And this can be a part of him getting out of the mess he's in. Tell him to apologize for what he did do wrong. And he has done some things wrong. That man named Jack with that beard, I can't remember his name. He's not playing. And Trump should be, not Trump, but Biden should be worried too because he's next. And his son. These people are not playing. Oh yes, there's politics involved. We all know that. That's why you ought not to be a part of it. You are not to take sides, as Dr. Tony Evans told you repeatedly over the past 40 years. We're the referee. We may have our preferences. You keep that quiet. You shut your mouth and you go into the booth and vote and shut up. Because you have to stand for God because you voted for God a long time ago. And for Jesus, if you will. Okay? So you don't need to be involved, entangled in the affairs of this life. You call balls and strikes. You call it as you see it. And if you're a real preacher of God, you got to call it like you see it now. And what you see right here is craziness. For him to continue to run, that's crazy. He needs to calm down. And just because he has a charismatic gift, and probably the biggest charismatic gift ever given to somebody, does not mean he can do what he wants to do. Those pictures of those boxes Lord have mercy. In his house, in his shower. That's damning, man. That's damning for any president, including Biden. And they ought to do him the same way. But what Trump's Attorney General said was that if he had just turned the stuff over and did not play games and act like a child, immature, and selfish, everybody who's listening to me, you know I'm telling the truth. He needs to shut it down now. And Trump needs to be praying. Because it doesn't, when you're dealing with the law, it doesn't matter who else did it. They're going to deal with you for doing it. That's how the law is. So you evangelical advisors, if you don't know what to say, I'm telling you what to say. If you love Trump, tell him he needs to shut his mouth. If you love Trump, tell him to at least get out of the race temporarily and take these things seriously. And if he doesn't, you tell him I cannot support you, and I'm going to say that publicly to all of my millions of followers. Tell him this for his own good. Tell him this for his own family's good. And tell him this for the good of the nation. And tell him this for the good of his followers. The people that love him. And let him communicate with them and tell him that this is best for you all too. I have said some things wrong. I have done some things wrong. People have died because of things I've said and done. People are in jail, sitting in jail, rotting in jail because of me. I'm going to do everything I can to get them out, but I got to make sure I stay out of jail myself to do that. And I remind these evangelical advisors that they cannot stand with Trump at the Christmas party in the White House and not stand with him in the courthouse. He needs to hear your voice and he needs to see your face. Doesn't matter what you have decided to do. He needs to hear your voice and he needs to see your face. You need to stand with Trump during this time, but you need to tell him to get out. I'm not telling you to vote for somebody else. I'm not telling you to tell him to endorse somebody else. He knows who he should endorse. And he needs to get behind him 100%. Full-throated, so that all of his followers would follow him. And he needs to say it repeatedly. And some of you evangelical advisors know who he should endorse. He knows who he should endorse. And he needs to do that with the quickness. And don't make these guys who should condemn the activity but not the person, but what the person did wrong, which they're not doing, they don't want to do it because they don't want to lose the support of Trump's followers. And that's wrong. But they're playing politics. You're not a politician. Franklin Graham, Jack Graham, Robert Jeffress. You're not a politician. Marvin Winans, Scott, and the rest of you. You're not politicians. You're supposed to be preachers. You speak the truth to power. And this is too far. Trump has gone too far. You should not even want him to be president with all of this mess that he is guilty of. It's not. Are they playing politics? Are they trying to get him? Yes. But as Trump said, they're trying to get you too. And if you don't stand for God, they'll get you too. Let's not be stupid, people. Make no mistake about it. This is not a jubilant day in America. This is a sad day, a sorrowful day in America. Everyone needs to cut out the gung-ho, bravado foolishness and start praying. 2 black preachers, as I mentioned before, who were advisors to Trump, who supported Trump to death, to their death. They believed what he said regarding the coronavirus. The coronavirus plague. They died of that without any fanfare or joyful mention, and many people are rotting in jail over rah-rah, gung-ho foolishness inspired by Trump. I told you I met a man the other day who was 100% behind Trump. 100% a Republican. He was in the military. He's retired. He's a salt of the earth kind of a guy. Still working. Trying to help others. He said, but after January 6th, he said, not me. A white guy. He said, I didn't fight for this country for that foolishness. That was nothing but foolishness. Beloved, in the words of Mrs. Ruby Gooding, the grandmother of my oldest daughter, Danielle Tequila. She told me sitting on a couch one day, and she was right then, and she's right now. This is a praying time. Trump needs to pray. All of you, every last one of you, minus Paula White. Every last one of you, minus Paula White. All of you men need to gather around Trump and pray for him like you did before, or as you did before. At the courthouse. You ought to be with him. Even if he says, I don't want you in here with me. You ought to be outside. He ought to see you in the crowd on the 6 o'clock news. You can't enjoy the good days and then shy away like you were not a part of it. Like Peter. You were very much involved, and you need to be involved now. But you need to tell him the truth. And if you're not willing to tell him the truth to get out of it, get out of the race, then don't even bother. Phone call is not going to do it. You need to do this face to face to him, and then you need to do it publicly. You need to tell him, and then you need to tell others what you said and announce your decision. If you're not going to support him anymore, you need to tell others that you're not going to support him, and why? You told them that you were supporting him when you did support him. So you need to tell them that you're not supporting him any longer. For his own good. You see, people, I don't want to see a president, be he Trump or Biden, in jail. They may deserve it. But all of you preachers have to admit a lot of what Trump has done has been childish foolishness. That's all. I know we don't like to talk like that, but it's just childish foolishness. His own Attorney General, Barr is his name, I think, said this is his fault. This is rooted in his upbringing. And if his parents didn't deal with it, you as men of God, you need to deal with it, because it's messing up the lives of many people. If Trump had behaved himself, he would be a shoo-in for the presidency of the United States of America, and no doubt probably would have never lost the last race. And the reason why I say you guys need to step up and get rid of Paula White is because we don't need for her on prancing across the stage talking about praying for some angels from Africa to come and help us. That was a disaster, and shows you why she should not be in leadership of anything. You men need to step up and be men. Quit yourself like men. And do what you know you need to do for this country. More importantly, for God. May God bless America. God bless you. Until next time.